Hello everyone, today I'm here with some exciting news. Outpouring Comics is proud to announce the addition of Terry Pavlett and Deborah Joseph's Dakota to the Outpouring library. Dakota features a female protagonist who is a cybernetic bounty hunter. It tells her tales as she goes through a post-apocalyptic wasteland, battling everything from cyborgs to dinosaurs to mutants. Go to outpouringcomics.storeenvy.com to pre-order your copy of Dakota today. Dakota, coming April 2nd from outpouringcomics.com.
Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of three opinionated guys with mics and too much free time. Strong enough to stop a speeding movie rumor, more powerful than a bad comic book event, able to waste hours of time asking stupid questions to people who have better things to do. It's Dave, Ben, and John. It's Superhero Speak.
Hey everyone, you're listening to Superhero Speak, and I'm your host Dave.
And Ben.
And John.
And this week, boys and girls, we wanted to do something a little different than our normal...
Hello? I was going to say, we wanted to get in touch with our family.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Huh.
Yes, I know, it's more difficult for some of us, less difficult for others, John. But this week, in honor, it's National Women's History Month. Did you guys know that?
I keep getting reminded, yes.
Oh.
What news in the newspapers? It's on my calendar for some reason. I think my wife had something to do with that. So no, I have no idea.
So I figured, it would be a really good idea to highlight some women in comics. And actually, before we get too far into this, I'm misleading people here. I don't want to take full credit for this idea. As our listeners probably know at this point that we do.
Dave has no ideas.
We work closely with Outpouring Comics with a lot of different things. They run ads for us. We run ads for them. We interview a lot of creators that work over there. And we've gotten a really good relationship with their CEO, John Miller. And he kind of suggested the idea where I was talking to him one day online. He's like, you should do a Women in Comics episode since it's, national. Well, actually, he didn't say it was not Women's History Month, but, I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good tie-in. And originally we were going to do this as a panel episode and have like 3 creators on and interview them all at once. And,
schedules are tricky.
Well, not only schedules are tricky, it was pointed out to me that panel episodes can kind of be a circus.
Yeah.
We've done them, right? We did that big... Go ahead.
We have, and it's true. They were a little bit of circuses, but they were fun at the time.
Yeah. The big, Heroes of Cosplay episode we did, that was a little tough.
Yeah.
Had to keep doing a round robin on it.
Right. Too many personalities.
Yes. Too many personalities, Roy.
So instead we're doing a 2-hour dissertation on Squirrel Girl, right?
Yes.
So.
Come on, she needs her time in the sun.
Yes, she does.
So what I did is I actually went out and interviewed 4 women who work in comics, and did 4 separate interviews with them, asking very similar questions to all 4 of them. But this way we could just highlight 4 women that work in comics. This way we're not making comments about women in comics. We're not making comments about sexism, about equal rights, because let's face it, we're 3 guys, and
Right. We don't want this to turn into like a Fox News panel.
Yes, unlike Congress, we know that we can't speak for women.
Right, yeah. We don't want to come off as 3 Donald Trumps. That would just not be good. So...
Wait a minute, if you've got one Trump and the other one trumps the Trump, then what happens to the third one? Does that trump the Trump, the Trump, the Trump?
The winner is whoever has the largest hands.
Oh. So none of the Trumps win then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So, real quick, before we get to our first interview, I just wanted to point out there is a long history of women working in comics.
Yes, sir.
Going all the way back to the 1800s. It's not something that's just started happening in the last 2 decades or so. It's just something that's been recognized in the last 15 years.
Right. True story. Women have made up 50% of the population pretty much forever.
Really? When did that happen?
So I've heard.
Except in China.
So again...
We will not speak of that.
So again, it's better for us to just highlight some of these women, and what they do and what they bring to the table and let them speak for themselves. So without further ado, we'll go right into the first one here. And this is Dawn Griffin, and she's an independent artist working on a webcomic called Zorbert and Ferb. And I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to go right into it. So here we go. Hey everyone. Now we're speaking with Dawn Griffin. She is the creator of Zorbert and Fred. She's also the artist for Abby's Adventures and the co-founder of Webcomic Alliance. How you doing?
I'm good, and yourself?
I'm doing all right. It's kind of a dreary day here in Philly, but I get to talk to you, so that makes it a good day.
Way to butter me up.
Yes. So one of the things that we always ask all our guests, we're always curious, when did you first get into comics?
I've always been into comics. I guess it wasn't like I stumbled on something. Ever since I was a little kid, like the first things I remember reading were the funny pages and my mom's old Peanuts books that she had. And when I got into reading Calvin and Hobbes is when I realized like I want to do this myself. And I always loved to draw, so that was tied into it, obviously. But I think it was also just I didn't just draw pictures just to draw pictures. I always had to have a purpose for them.
Okay.
Such as, I would draw a multiplication workshop booklet with cartoon characters, and my poor sister in kindergarten was multiplying, because I had to have like a project behind it. So I think that the tie-in with using my talents to speak to others in some fashion, to help others, or just make them laugh or whatever, was always part of why I would draw.
Oh, that's cool. I'm just kind of curious, because, we all read the funnies, when we were younger. Do you remember at what age you realized like somebody actually did that and that was a job you could actually do if you wanted to?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure when it like clicked with me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like I read the funnies. I thought they were good. I wasn't really thinking about the authors. I was just enjoying them and relating to the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started drawing my own characters. And I think that, once I got older, probably closer to 10 or so, that, my parents started buying me books, how to make it in the comic business or something like that, And so I started reading about, okay, here's how it's done. And then I learned more about the actual creators behind the comic strips, at least, and how
Right.
that all worked. And so I started honing my ability to write. And that was like the last thing to come, because I could draw something, and I would often borrow a joke from another comic strip and I would draw it. And I would just use their joke. And I realized, well, I can't always do that. So I started writing my own probably when I was 12, something like that. I started trying to be funny. Failing mostly, but I started getting my comics in like the school newspaper, like they were my middle school and then my high school, but I was sending out submissions to syndicates starting at the age of 14.
Oh wow,
and I figured I remember finding out that it took like Bill Watterson from Calvin and Hobbes, someone in the vicinity of like 12 years, if I'm remembering correctly, to get syndicated, and I'm like, oh, I better get started now.
Well, that's a great story, because I have a 13-year-old son, and I'm gonna have him listen to this and say, hey, now you get off your butt and start doing something.
I'm not the norm. I mean, that's definitely for sure. I wasn't into being Susie High School or whatever, and all I wanted to do was I would play a lot of sports, so like play ball and draw comics, and I really wasn't into doing the high school dances and going out and partying, and it just wasn't my scene. And the friends I did have were more an eclectic kind of fringe group of people that didn't really fit in anywhere else either. So actually my first comic strip ended up being about just that, a bunch of fringe people that all kind of hung out together and were very different, but kind of enjoyed the fact that they were all different.
Cool. Nice small Nickelodeon sitcom.
Yeah. Yeah, it is this stereotypical first comic strip that most cartoonists start with is like,
Hmm.
oh, I do something about my friends, everybody has done that at some point, but it's good practice.
Yes, yes. So obviously you were influenced by the comics you were reading because you stole some of their jokes. Who were some of the people that influenced you in your early days?
Well, obviously, like I said, Bill Watterson. I
Hmm.
liked Lynn Johnston, for better or for worse. I just thought that her characters aged, and that was something that was really new
Hmm.
to that business of comic strips. And they had, she had one of her characters came out as gay, and that was like one of the first times in newspaper funnies that ever happened. And that was pretty groundbreaking. And I just thought, this woman's got balls, man. Like, I like the fact that she did things differently and kind of paved her own way. But there was so much heart in her comic and it connected in strange ways. There are a lot of parallel ways it connected to my family and my circle of friends too.
Right.
So it was kind of eerie, like their dog in the comic Farley died the same year that our dog died.
Hmm.
It was one of those weird things that things like aligned in that way. So it became more a sentimental thing, rather than just, like, I like that comic. It was funny. It was like a sentimental attachment with me and my
Right.
family. But I mean, a lot of different things and cartoons on TV, animated movies, almost anything can influence me. It doesn't have to just be sequential art, but I can draw from that. And a lot of times when I'm going to draw, I'm not imagining a flat panel. I'm imagining it, as if I was a director. So watching movies, seeing how they do, especially animated movies, and that comes into play as well. So, and then as I got older, I started reading into different comics. I really enjoyed Robert Crumb's work, and I got into American Splendor. And
Hmm. Okay.
nowadays, I'm just all over the board. Like, I love horror, which is kind of funny because I'm such a kid-friendly, cutesy cartoonist. But then I really dig some horror comics. Like, I love Lock and Key. And,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I could get into like all sorts of random stuff. Saga is awesome. So yeah, now I'm all over the place because I'm realizing that, comics, well, I have realized that comics are not just superhero stuff.
Right. Right.
And so I can you basically anything that you might already like, any genre, you can go out and find a comic that'll suit your tastes. And in fact, that's what I did this year for Christmas. Is I basically said, I'm going to introduce all my close family to comics. And I went to a favorite comic book shop who someone there's excellent. She's just the best at picking out comics for, here's what this person likes. Give me a comic that they would like, like she's a librarian. She loves to read novels and she pulls out this like really like existential kind of deep thinking type of comic. I forget what it's even called, but and I wrapped up all these comics and gave them to people and they quite enjoyed it, and it was kind of fun to open that door up to them saying, see, the comics are not just superhero stuff that everyone thinks they are. So
Right. Right.
that was fun.
No, that's so true. I mean, and it's but yet that's what the mainstream, that's what people think. I mean, it's so popular. The superhero movies have got blown up, but yet movies will come out that are based on non-superhero comics, and I'll say to my wife, like, yeah, that's based on a comic by so and so. It
hmm
was. I'm
Yep.
like,
Yep. I know. It's funny how many people don't even realize Walking Dead was a comic. I
oh
mean, it
yeah.
was in the beginning, like of the show, but it's funny how some people don't even realize it. My sister-in-law was never a comic reader. She's a librarian, and she actually got the big omnibus, like the the
Hmm.
humongous the humongous book. There's only like two or three of them out right now, and so she got the first one, was reading through it, and she was just enjoying comparing it to the show because she loves the show so much.
Yeah.
And she was like, "This is really cool because it's like the same guy who wrote the comic and did the show." I'm like, "I know, it is cool, isn't it?" So
Oh,
it is funny to see it, starting to affect circles that didn't realize it before. They just need someone to kind of poke that door open for them.
now I will admit this. I never really got into Walking Dead.
Hmm
I mean, and this is because I do kind of like happy endings. Um, So it's kind of tough for me. But I'll never forget the first year Walking Dead came out, the comic book, and I was at New York Comic Con, and like it was everywhere, and there was a long line at the Image booth because they were giving out copies of the Walking Dead, and just like all these people talking about it and how great it was, but unfortunately, no, I don't like it. It's not bad. It's just not my taste, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've read. I have a couple. I've been meaning to get the big collection and just plow through it. But I have a couple of the first like trade paperbacks or whatever, and read them, and it's it's only more fun for me to read it because I like comparing it to the TV show. I think if
Right.
there was no TV show, I probably would have stopped after the first two and been like, that's good enough. I don't need it anymore. Like, it's not quite my type of horror. I don't like zombie stuff usually.
Hmm.
So, when it gets to horror, I'm so particular and weird about it that, it could be more supernatural, but like, yeah, any of the like slasher films or, zombie stuff just doesn't really get to me. But yeah, it's like whatever can actually scare me, not just startle me, but like get to you where you turn off the movie and then it's too quiet in your house,
Right.
and you can't help but wonder. That's that type of stuff. And so few things scare me like that I'm always on the search for something else that'll get to me. So
Yeah, I remember that feeling that way the first time I saw The Exorcist.
yes, exactly. That's the only movie that is like a rewatch, has rewatch value and rescare value for me. That every time I watch it, I turn it off and I just expect to like blink and see that face.
Oh,
Like
yes.
that would flash, like just see it in a flash, and then I would just like
Hmm.
like run off like screaming out of my house or something. But yeah, that movie was really got to me.
Yeah. So along the lines of mainstream comics, so traditionally, especially with probably from at least the 60s on, uh, mainstream comics, superheroes has been considered, for boys, geared towards boys. It's a boys club kind of thing.
Mhm.
And of course, along with that, the characters, the art can be considered very sexist at times. And, it's, I see within the last few years, those things are starting to get a little bit better, but I don't think we're quite there yet. So what do you think are some of the things, the comic book companies can do or the consumers can do to like, start making things a little better in that area?
Oh, this is a tough question. I mean, I think that women are getting more into reading comics, and the old beating of the drum from comic companies is that, well, we're writing for our demographic. Our demographic's not women. Women don't read comics. And then they put out a really crappy women's comic,
Mm-hmm.
like Divas or something.
Oh God.
Then women are like, yeah, I'm not reading this. And they go, see, women don't read comics. Case dismissed. Like, it just like that. No, this is not how it works. But
Mm-hmm.
now there's outside of the typical superhero stuff. There's other stuff coming out, and women are really getting into that. And even within, like Miss Marvel, excellent comic. I love it.
Yes.
I mean, she's a teenager. She's dealing with having these superpowers and being a Muslim American and being a teenager, and like that's a lot of conflict, and that's a lot of depth to her character, and that's really what it's all about. Is like, okay, so we get it. You're gonna have to, for superhero stuff, you're gonna have to make them sexy and make them scantily clad, and that'll appeal to the men. But if you add a little more depth to it, to the characters, maybe it can start to level things out.
Mm-hmm.
I've always come back to this one point when it comes to um, male readers versus female readers, and there's this overarching understanding that women are expected to be able to pick up a book and read about a man or a boy's character, and relate to that character, and not have a problem with it. Not be like, well, I can't possibly understand this because it's a man. You know, but they can pick it up, they can empathize, they can relate to it. But conversely, if you hand a man a comic book that just features a woman, well, it's a chick flick. This is a chick book. I don't really care about this. I'm not going to be able to relate to it. So if I was to do another comic and it features and it happens to feature a female character as the lead, my demographic is going to be only females. Even if I'm not writing necessarily anything to deal with just females, it just happens to be that she's a woman.
Mm-hmm.
That will be my demographic. That's the way it is, and its kids are brought up to be the same way.
Right.
With the two entities that I have a kids book series that features a girl. Her name's Abby. She's on all the covers. They're very girly looking. So they are geared more towards girls. And then I have a comic book series, which is it is E for everyone. It's about aliens and dog costumes. It's cute, but because there's no female right in the cover, plastered on the cover, when people come to my table, like, oh, I get it, that's for girls and that's for boys. So it's the assumption. If there's a girl on the cover, boys won't read it. And that's I think the biggest thing. If we can shake that, if you can make a solid comic that men would read and it happens to be about a girl, then I see the shift would be happening in the minds of men. And,
Right.
You can change the industry all you want, but I think that it just has to be a societal change too for it to really work. They can put out stuff for women, put out stuff for men and go, okay, now you guys both got your stuff, so stop whining. But, but yeah, if you want it to be totally even keel, then the way that women are expected to empathize with a male character, maybe men should be expected to empathize with a female too, and that would better society as a whole. But that's what always comes down to in the back of my head. It's like they can put out all the stuff that they want. That's like, okay, we've written this for women, and women will buy it, and and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. But you can do that all you want, but.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the biggest change, but I know that's kind of asking a lot.
No, and I, you know what? I 1,000% agree with everything you just said. Like, and I look at it on the movie side, in the sense of like Warner Brothers, DC, I think are the most guilty. Well, no, Marvel's pretty bad too, but like they keep giving us Batman movies and Superman movies and Batman movies and Superman. Wonder Woman's been around just as long as the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finally getting her on the big screen
and she's the third notch.
Exactly. As the third supporting character in this movie. And it's like, oh yeah, and we're working on a solo Wonder Woman movie. Well, why didn't you just do a solo Wonder Woman movie? Why were you too afraid to do that first?
Yeah, I would love to be a fly in the wall in that conference that they had about it. It was just like, well, we could have a Wonder Woman movie, but she has to be the third-rate character. Otherwise, men aren't going to go see it. And that's been said. Like, know it's been said. And it's been said probably because, in general, it's true. Except for men that have kind of taken a step forward and progressed a little bit in understanding that. And be like, you know what? Wonder Woman movie would kick ass just as much as any, Superman or Batman movie, So I think that, I just don't know where, when your mind is set on making the money and making the most amount of money that you possibly can.
Right.
Where do you consciously make that? We're going to be daring here and take a step forward here, even though all of our research shows it's not going to be as profitable. But, once you start seeing companies take that step, and, there has been some.
Right.
There's some Disney princess movies that aren't nearly as Disney princessy as they have been in the past. You see a little bit with Frozen, you see a little bit with Brave. And I know a lot of little boys who love that movie Brave. They love the bears, they like a lot of the magic parts of it. And, they enjoyed it,
Yes.
and it's like, okay, well, there we go. And it's like, I bet you didn't even think of it as a Disney princess movie, did you?
Right.
So, there's like a lot of baby steps that are going to come along, but,
Yeah.
eventually we're pointing at someone in the right direction. We just have to get the monsters like DC and Marvel to take some giant noteworthy steps that kind of sets the path going forward for other companies to say, well, they did it and it worked.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, even like Daredevil, where like there's a line in the movie where he goes, "Oh, I bet you're sitting there thinking your boyfriend told you this is a superhero movie." Like, well, why does it have to be the boyfriend?
Mm-hmm.
My daughter like jumped at the chance to go see the movie. She was like, "Yeah, I want to go see that. Let's go." And
they have caught up to the rest of us. I think. I don't think most of us are exactly there yet, but I think that we are closer to it than Marvel and DC is.
Yeah.
We're going to have to drag them with us on our path.
Kicking and screaming, right?
Kicking and screaming, yes. And maybe part of that is getting more women into Marvel and DC and having
Yes.
more say in that way. And, it's a male-dominated industry anyway, but just that would be helpful.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, unfortunately, you can count the number of women, successful women in the business probably on two hands. And it's tough, I mean, and I'm not taking away from anyone like you, but I'm talking people recognize, once you get to the status where you've worked on, let's say, Batgirl for 10 years or Supergirl for 5 years, and that's another thing. They don't always give the female writers the female characters too. And, like there's right now, Gail Simone left Batgirl and a man took over, and it's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that it would be ideal if, like I said, if we've achieved more of that enlightened view of writing for women, writing for men, that both genders could do that for either gender.
Right.
And part of that might be actually talking to and listening to the other gender and noting that there are differences, noting that there are similarities. And I think once you do that, the more often you'll notice that there's not generally that many differences. They were just overblown because of stereotypes and society. And the more you talk, you're like, it's really not that different, And
no, that's very true.
Different. You talk to one woman and she's like, oh, this is what it's like to be a woman. You talk to another woman, she has a totally different view, and you're like, well, crap, this is not helping me. If I want to pigeonhole someone, this isn't going to work. And hey, maybe that's the point.
Right. I mean, and the same thing with men. You can talk to one man and he's like, this is what it means to be a man. You can talk to another man,
right.
and he's like, right. And it's just so frustrating. I do applaud, you talked a little bit about eliminating some of the barriers between the sexes. I applaud Target for what they've done, where now it's just a toy aisle. It's not a boys' toy aisle and not a girls' toy aisle. Like, it makes perfect sense.
I mean, that is great. And the more things you see come out, I mean, I forget, I was reading about a study about toy lines and how in the 70s, like 20% of toys, I think it was 20%. It was a lower number than I was thinking it'd even be. Percent of toys were geared towards one gender or another. So that means 80% were just toys. And like by today's standards, like, how is that even possible? Don't you have to market it? Don't you have to make like the Legos like pink and purple so that girls know that they're for them? Like, and it's just like, oh goodness. I mean, it's one of those things. And I was a child of the 80s, and the toy business blew up because everything was connected to TV shows. And once I think there had to be something passed where they would allow cartoons to have commercials that would promote toys, because before that they didn't, or something. I forget what it is exactly, but there was something passed that allowed that, and that became a boom for these toys. Because I remember asking myself about certain toys. I was a Thundercats kid, so I had all the action figures, and I mean, I loved like Thundercats and He-Man and Matchbox cars and all that stuff. But I remember asking myself when I would see people playing with like something from Hello Kitty, and I'm like, what kind of toy is that? There's not even a show connected to it. Like I couldn't even fathom the idea that maybe toys didn't have to have shows, and I was just like, no, she's an infiltrator. I don't like this anymore. But yeah, I mean, that was such a big thing. So I think that started happening in the 80s, where you had your boy aisle and your girl. I mean, I always remember that being the case. You had the pink Barbie aisle, and you had the action aisle. Then you had a bunch of general aisles, but like you definitely had that starting. But yeah, now it's like so divisive that can't be good. I mean, I guess it makes shopping brainless, because it's like, that's what a lot of people would say when they were opposed to the Target shift was, well, now I don't know what aisle to go to when I have to shop for my niece. Like, maybe you should like meet your niece.
Right.
What she likes to do. Just not be like the pink aisle. Okay, buy things. Like just like actually get to know this child and see what she likes. I mean, my parents had to confide in everybody. Like, stop buying her My Little Ponies and Barbies. She's not into that stuff. Like, they had to, like, explain that to people in the 80s, and
Yeah.
lots
Yeah.
of returns.
Right. You know, it's if your niece, all right, we'll call your brother or sister, whoever the parent is, and say, hey, what does she like? It takes 2 seconds, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we have a niece and a nephew, and that's always been, the part of the email chain is like, okay, this is what Charlotte wants, and this is what Patrick
Hmm.
wants. And at least we'd know where they're heading in and what kind of, they always went through phases. This is monster truck phase, and Charlotte's in arts and crafts phase, and so, and then that was like, that's great. Then you feel like you're actually buying something personal. So
Right.
only a good thing. Way to go, Target.
So, and speaking of kids and getting people interested in comics and whatnot, question that we've been asking everyone on this: if a young girl, let's say between the ages of like 10 and 12, comes up to you at maybe at a convention or just on the street and says, I really want to get into comic books. What do you suggest that I read? What would you recommend?
Into reading or drawing?
Well, I actually just reading the comics. Yes.
Okay. Again, Miss Marvel. That's what I would, if you want to get into somewhat of a superhero touch, you know what I mean? But I think that's such an excellent book. I'm trying to think, is it too old for that group? I don't think so.
No, I don't
I
think
just read the second trade paperback, and I'm like, I mean, it's fun, and the way that it's the dialogue is so today, it's so modern,
Mhm.
that I'd like that. What is the other one? The Gotham Academy. I just bought that for my niece who's
okay.
12. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Lumberjanes, also very good. I mean, there's so many out there. I'm stockpiling stuff like that right now because
Cool.
the next graphic novel that I'm going to work on, and try to pitch to publishers is going to be geared towards preteen. And like I said, I want to feature a female as the lead role, but
Mhm.
it's going to be done in a way that I would hope, if a boy is forward enough thinking to be able to pick it up and say, hey, this looks cool, I'd like to read it, and not care that the main character is a girl. I would think it would be appealing to anybody who's dealing with that age of self-consciousness when you first realize that, other people are around you and judge you, and you're trying to fit in and
Right.
find your own, who you are as a person too. And that's a rough age. So I would hope
Yes.
that either gender would enjoy it, but it's going to feature a girl. So
Cool. All right. And a question that we always like to wrap up with is, how do you measure success?
I mean, success is it's something that ebbs and flows, and
Mhm.
it it's one of those things you feel like you never really attain. I think especially in American society, it's always, your success is always one rung higher than where you are now. Unless you're really lofty, then it's like 10 rungs higher. But I think it's just, maybe just success is the fact that you're still trying. Because as soon as you achieve one thing that you were hoping to, then you feel like, well, this isn't enough. I want more than this.
Right.
And I think as an artist, you're always looking to improve, and that's probably the best advice I ever got from a professor in college, who I was always trying to impress and trying to get him to. He was an illustration professor, and I always wanted to give him something where he would look at it and just say, perfect, I have nothing bad to say about this. Like, he couldn't critique it at all. And I did that. I did that one time, and I was just like, yes, I can coast for the rest of college. And I think he heard me thinking that, because he turned around and looked at me, and he like slammed his hands on my desk in front of me, and he said, don't get comfortable. He's like, once you get comfortable, you're no longer an artist. He's like, I want to see something from you completely different next week. And I'm like, oh crap, but
Right.
it was the best lesson, because as soon as you feel like, I'm the best I can be, I'm good, I don't have to try anymore now, you're no longer an artist. You have to keep trying, keep pressing, and you'll only find that it benefits you in the end. And I guess that is, in the ever-changing world of what is success in comics. And I mean, some equate it as, well, you have to be able to quit your day job and only be drawing comics, and then you're successful. But maybe you want health care. Maybe
There you go.
you want to be able to afford to have something bigger than a studio apartment, and then what does success mean then, So
Right.
I think if you're proud of what you've accomplished and are still striving to do better, then you found success. It's just not one thing, just continue on with the success.
Right. No, that's great, and that's exactly why we asked the question, because I think everyone gives a different answer, and
Sure.
it means something different to everyone, and that's kind of the point of the question.
And I would have given you a different answer 2 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yep.
My success when I first started drawing the comic strips was, I want to be able to have my own book. I'll be in the papers, and then I'll have my own book. Well, I skipped the papers, and I went right to the book. So. But now I don't. Do I feel like I've reached success and I can stop now? No. So,
Cool.
it is a good question.
All right. So as we're wrapping up here, Andrew, any projects or anything out there you want people to look out for?
Well, I'm just starting. I'm just finished the one comic strip after 9 years, and then moving on to something else new, which I will have a Patreon page for. I don't have anything up for that yet, but I'm just a forewarning.
Okay.
But you can read my old comic at zfcomics.com, and my portfolio page, and has all my links to social media and stuff too, is dawngriffinstudios.com.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much for taking your time out to do this. We greatly appreciate it, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting me on.
Cool. So, here's an interesting fact about women in comics. We talk about how things are not equal. The Eisner Awards, as we all know, are the top awards in comics today, right? They give them out at San Diego Comic-Con and whatnot, and at least...
Well, if it's on the West Coast, it means it.
And they've been doing this since the mid-'80s, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 130 recipients of the Hall of Fame for the Eisner Awards. And only 5 women are in the Hall of Fame out of 135 people. So it's a little unbalanced.
A little, although I have to point out that one of those Eisner Award recipients was a Miss Karen Berger, who actually won it 3 times and was very pivotal in giving us some very important comics via DC and Vertigo, including getting Neil Gaiman to work on the Sandman series.
So
there you go.
See how important women are? If there wasn't women, we wouldn't be here, right? Is that pretty much how this works?
That is pretty true.
All right.
I have it on good authority that without women, none of us would be here today.
Not only do we all have mothers, a lot of us have wives that push us forward to keep working and keep staying interested and working to make the world a better place. And nothing speaks better for, what's the word I'm looking for? When you get, you help someone out because they're related to you.
Paid?
What?
Bribed? Paid? I don't know.
I'm just kidding around. Our next interview is actually Sarah Miller, who is the wife of John Miller. But she's more than that. She is the production manager over at Outpouring Comics, which I wasn't really 100% sure what a production manager did until I talked to her. And it's quite interesting. And, I'm not going to spoil it. You guys listen. Here we go. Hey, everyone. So continuing our conversation with different women in comics, we are here with Sarah Miller, who is the production manager over at Outpouring Comics. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
So, what we're trying to do here is break down some of the stereotypes around comics, and not necessarily, we're not trying to delve too much into the sexism, but more into the stereotype that comics are just for boys, and that the girls don't read them. So my first question is, and this, I ask this of everyone I interview, when did you first become interested in comics?
Well, I have 3 older brothers, so I've kind of always been interested in comics.
Mm-hmm.
I really got into it more like the cartoons. The 90s cartoons of the X-Men were a big thing that I loved watching when I was younger.
Okay.
And from there, it just kind of expanded. I don't even know what to say after that. I've always liked the whole Marvel and DC thing. I've always just liked it.
So was X-Men one of your favorite?
Absolutely.
Cool. And so you were into the cartoons, and a lot of people get into it through the cartoons. Do you remember maybe what the first comic was you ever bought?
Ooh. I'm trying to think of it.
Was it an X-Men maybe, or?
It was actually the Runaways. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go.
The Runaways.
Cool. That was 90s Runaways?
The more updated one. I don't remember when exactly I got it, but.
Okay. Cool. So what you would say is that, so you definitely are saying, like, you were always into comics. It's not like something, your husband didn't drag you into it, or.
Yeah, no.
It wasn't.
Definitely not.
Right. No, and that's cool. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to, say here. So then, as a woman working in comics, who are some women that have inspired you in your life?
Oh, geez. Oh, man, there's so many. Well, my mom was never really into the comic scene, but she's definitely one that's always supported us.
Right.
With whatever we wanted. So, definitely my mom. Let me see. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
It's all right. It doesn't have to be someone in comics, just any woman in history that's influenced you, or that you've looked up to in some way or another.
Well, it was much more recent, but there was a comic panel done at Expo 9.
Okay.
And there was a woman author there by the name of Maria Gilbert, and she was an older woman, and me, I was still, it was just, I believe, last year, I believe, and I was still pretty young and pretty nervous. I'll admit I probably won't lose that for quite some time, but she had a good confidence about her, and she's got some books out. I haven't got a chance to read them yet. I do want to read them, but just, I don't know, she just kind of, her confidence and just her attitude and her very friendly spirit, I just definitely admired that about her.
Right.
And I feel like even just within the past year that's helped me.
Oh, that's great. So, just for the people at home who don't know, what do you do as a production manager?
Oh, geez. What don't I do? I try to do a lot, for one, because I want to be supportive, and, being an owner helps as well. I do a lot of the lettering for the in-universe stuff and for some of the out-of-universe stuff. Mm-hmm. I also, when we get the pages from other people, like if they're already fully complete, I'm the one that makes sure everything's the right size. I put it all in one file, in one PDF. A couple of things I've worked on. I lettered Manifest Destiny. It was one of the biggest projects I had to do because it was 60 pages. And
wow.
That I was using a slightly inferior program for lettering at the time, so it took a very long time. I've also lettered our Voda series, which is kind of funny because it was the first time I lettered anything, and I've come a long way since then. Let me see what else. I've lettered... Uh-oh. Sorry, little fussy baby there.
That's all right.
I've lettered Shadow Games, which is out, and I'm going to be lettering Heroes United, which is going to be Outpouring Comics' newest thing, and we've got a Kickstarter for that actually in April. Basically, I make sure everything looks good. I'm the final formatter for the company.
Right. So kind of like what a producer in some ways does on a TV or a movie set. You make sure that a lot of the things get done and they're done right.
Yeah. Cool.
And I guess you wouldn't do that if you didn't love the medium and love what you were doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So and speaking of comic books as a medium, traditionally they do gear towards men, as we said earlier, and some of the common tropes and the styles can be considered sexist. So what do you see as the biggest stumbling block for women in comics today?
I kind of feel like they just sometimes aren't given a chance because of what you said, because there's the whole thing where, well, comics are for boys. So there's a lot of times where they're just not given a chance. Kind of off topic, but kind of on topic. I used to work for a gaming company that sold video games, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say it or not. But there was one time a gentleman came in and I greeted him as I was supposed to, and he just literally didn't look at me, just walked right by me, headed straight for the guy that was working. And I was like, really?
Wow.
Like, why? Like, I can help. I play cool video games and kid video games and girly video games and boyish video games. So I kind of think that applies to this as well. I just think sometimes they're just not given a chance because of the stereotype.
No, I mean that really sucks because like my daughter, you know, I'll never forget the first thing I ever bought my stepdaughter was her first Game Boy, which my wife got mad at me for, but she loved it. So she's been a gamer since she was 5 years old, and she'll come to me now and say, "Hey, Dad, there's this you know, cool game out. You should go give it a try. I think you'll like it." You know, like she's the one that got me into Dragon Age. You know, so and that's one of my favorite series. Yeah,
definitely. I'm actually playing that.
Yeah, so I would never. I mean, like, yes, a woman's opinion is just as valid as a man's. You know.
Yeah.
It just goes by taste. If you have the same taste as me, then I'll probably take your recommendations. It's that simple. If you walk up to me and say, "Get the latest basketball game," I'm probably not going to be interested. So okay, cool. And so it's breaking those stereotypes. So what do you think?
Yes.
What do you think are some ways comic book companies could break those stereotypes?
I mean, that's kind of tough. I just give everyone a shot. I mean, that's really the only thing I can think of, because without trying, you're never gonna actually see if you're right or wrong. I mean, that's really all there is to it. And I know, like, especially for like the bigger companies, to be wrong even for the smaller companies, to be wrong is awful. That it's loss of profit, loss of time, loss of everything. But you still have to just, you know, if someone genuinely has a good idea, hear them out.
Right. No, definitely. And I mean, there are small things I'm starting to see some of the companies do. In fact, DC has launched a whole Girls of DC campaign thing where they have books out, and I think there's a cartoon coming out, or like an online cartoon where it focuses on all the female characters as like teens and tweens to try to appeal to younger female readers to bring them into it. Do you think that's a step in the right direction? Do you think that's, or do you think that's maybe just pandering to make people happy?
I mean, it could very well be a little bit of both, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a step in the right direction, but at the same time, you shouldn't have to make a mainly girls only group. I mean, just kind of mix the girl characters with the boy characters.
Right.
Which they kind of do anyways with some of them, but like, I know, just make the female characters more prominent now and then, I guess. I mean,
no, and that's true. I mean, and it forms a version of exclusivity where it's like, oh well, here's a girl's book that's got just girls in it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think, because X-Men's a great example where there's always been a balance, well, except for maybe the first iteration, but there's always been a balance. There's always been one or two females on the X-Men. In fact, a few years ago, there was an all-female team for a while on the X-Men. And so, like, you know, Marvel's always tried its best. I don't think they've always succeeded, but they've tried to write strong female characters. And I think they've tried to get a little bit better with that. You know, I've kind of always, I don't know. I mean, I'm not as much of a DC fan, but it always seemed like it was Batman, Superman, Aquaman, Flash, and Wonder Woman on the Justice League. Like, one girl, all the, you know, for 50 years. So.
Yep.
So, I mean, hopefully it's getting better, and one day they'll be, you know, more inclusive. You know, but as of today, if a young girl was to come up to you at a con or, you know, just on the street, and they knew that you worked in comic books, and they said, you know, I want to start reading comic books. What do you recommend that I read? What would you tell them?
I mean, first it's starting, you know, gotta get something age appropriate, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely point out some of our comics, especially if it's further along by then. I'm actually writing one of our lines. It's called In Limbo. We're still working on it though. So I would probably definitely recommend that. And it's also based on, like, what do you like? Do you like science fiction? Do you like fantasy? Stuff like that. I'd give Runaways a shout out because I like it, because I think it's fun. I mean, especially if they're teenagers, it's more age appropriate, I feel. Most of the X-Men lines I like I've said, I'm definitely more of a Marvel fan myself. If they want something a little quirky, maybe go with something Spider-Man-ish.
Yeah. Cool.
Like that.
Cool. And so, before we run out of time here, what's something that Outpouring is working on right now that you guys want to promote?
Well, I already mentioned Heroes United is
Mhm.
coming. That's gonna be very fun. That, like I said, that Kickstarter is coming in April. Let me see. I'm sorry. Sorry, I just got sidetracked real quick. I'm working on In Limbo. It's gonna be awesome. It's a sci-fi, kind of like soul-searching, comic. Let me see what else. What else do we have? I'm sorry, I just blanked out there. We do have Inheritance coming out soon with the new one. It's a slow burn horror. It's very, very interesting. And let me see. We got a lot of stuff from Rusty Gilligan that's currently out and will be coming out. Rusty's a great guy. If you hope you guys have met him, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Definitely love him. And we have a John Orlando Collette's coming out. What was that?
Yeah, no. We've had Rusty on the show, and I talked to him online.
I didn't hear you.
Hello? Uh-oh.
Okay.
Oh.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. There's an uh-oh I hear.
There must be a delay.
Is everything okay? Okay. All right. And I guess the last thing I'd give a shout out to is we have an anthology coming out called Renegade Alliance. It's a political drama. It's going to be pretty interesting.
Cool. So, a question I always like to wrap up with is, how do you measure success?
How do you measure? Wow. That's a tough question. Probably by your willingness to do things. Just always be willing to do the thing that you need to get done.
All right, cool. Good answer. Well, on that lines, where can people reach you online? I guess assume it's still Outpouring Comics on Twitter. Where other places can people find you?
Well, our website, outpouringcomics.com, on Facebook, Outpouring Comics. We do have an Instagram account as well, and I believe those are the best ways to get in touch with us.
Cool. All right, well, thank you very much for your time, and of course, all those links will be in the description of the episode, and all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, now, Dave,
yes?
you say that she's the wife of John Miller. Was she the wife before she had the job or after?
Well, you need to listen to the interview and find out. Actually, Sarah is the one who got John into comics. Yes.
Oh, that's how I got into comics. I always wondered about that.
I wonder about a lot of things with you, John.
That was something I didn't wonder about, John. But now I know, and knowing is half the battle.
Yes.
Someone would say with me it's the whole battle, but it's okay.
No, the other half are red and blue lasers. We all know that.
Red versus blue.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, free association what?
Yes, exactly. Speaking of free association and having fun.
And bad segues.
Our next interview is Emily Drouin, and she does a comic called Epless, which is an all-ages sci-fi book. And the book's a lot of fun, actually. I think after you guys listen to this, you should go check out her book, and the link is in the description as always. So again, without further ado, here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue our conversation now with Emily Drouin. She works on an independent book called Epless, and she's going to help us continue our conversation about women in comics. How are you doing today?
Hi, very well. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you, and thanks again for having me on the show.
Oh, no. Thank you for doing it. So, before we get into this, can you tell us a little bit about your book and how it came about?
Yeah, so I have a fun for all ages sci-fi action adventure comic book series called Epless, and it's super colorful, family friendly, kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon kind of visual part of it. And so I started this book a couple of years ago. I self-publish. My husband Jeremy and I co-write it together, and I do all the artwork. And we self-publish it right here using the Hippo Press in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I'm working on our fourth book right now in the series. And it's basically about a Dr. Archimedes invents the Epless. And the Epless is is this energy device that he uses trying to destroy the evil aliens of Krios that are coming, trying to absorb all the energy and just destroying worlds in the process. So he's trying to fight them, and then something happens, and then he ends up getting transported through space and time, and a bunch of colorful characters in the crew of the Luna ship, they are on a search to help and try to find him, and they pick up all these cool celestial segments that one was built in with the Eplis, and they build all these cool new weapons and stuff. But it's a wacky, fun adventure. It's not so much violent. It's just they go on all sorts of fun adventures through space and time.
Cool. I think it sounds like fun, and I think I'll check it out. So when did you first get interested in comics?
Ever since I was a little kid, I loved getting the Sunday morning comics in the paper, and so like Peanuts and Garfield and and Calvin and Hobbes are among some of my favorites. And I used to draw my own comics then, ever since I can remember, like 5 years old. And throughout elementary school, I would write my own stories and illustrate them, like children's books, and have all kinds of fantasy stories. And I just have always had a passion for drawing cartoons and comics since then. And I always wanted to be a children's book illustrator and author. And so I just kept pursuing that passion. And I've done a bunch of other books too in the process, as well as this comic book series. And I particularly love doing children's books because you can just be so fun and super colorful and silly with them. So I really enjoy it.
Well, I have to point this out. In the almost 3 years that I've been doing this show, you might be the first person that said it was the Sunday funnies that got you interested in comics. And
yeah.
And I love that because I'm pretty sure that's how I originally got into it as well. And I always loved Garfield.
Yeah, and I would go to the library and get like the volumes of Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes, and so that's how I really got into it.
Right. Okay. So who are some of the writers and artists that have influenced you in your career?
Well, I also do have to say one of my favorites I did enjoy was, do you remember the magazine Disney Adventures?
Yes.
It was filled with comics, and so I'd have to say that was really a big influence for me. All the various stories, and also the Saturday morning cartoons of Disney. I definitely feel that influenced my art. Just kind of like the wackiness and the super colorful qualities of it. As far as writing, I'd have to say really, I love sci-fi and the writing of Doctor Who and Star Trek. I would have to say, I know they're not necessarily, well, they are comics now actually, but I always love the stories and all the wacky adventures that they go on, and so yeah.
Cool. Is there are there any particular women in maybe alive today or in history that inspired you?
Yeah, actually one of my favorite artists when I first attended my first Comic-Con was in 2010. I know I'm a bit late with that. Yeah, I just happened to see an ad. I was at the Grant State Comic-Con at the Radisson in Manchester, and I was really surprised how many women creators there are, and each year I see more and more at comic conventions. But one of my favorites, I'd say, is Sarah Richard, and she's a local. She was from here in Portsmouth, I think. She's from New Hampshire.
Okay.
So she, seeing her work and seeing how even from then to now where she's at doing My Little Pony and Bob's Burgers comics, and it just, she's really inspired me to pursue this and to pursue my passion for comics, and seeing that like even a local person, and you just kind of keep going and have faith in yourself, and yeah, just keep the more you draw and better you'll get. And,
right. Cool. So along the lines of women in comics, so, I mean, within the last, for the last 40 years or so, comics really have kind of been seen as a boys' club, and something that is geared towards young men and boys, and with that, of course, comes with the art that's kind of sexist and sexism within the books themselves sometimes. What do you think? Do you think things are getting better? And if not, what do you think some of the things are that women in comics could do to help, resolve some of these issues?
Well, I definitely feel that things are improving. If you look at it, they still, of course, have the, those kind of stereotypical women in distress and big boobs, scantily clad. But also I have seen it in a bunch of comics. If you go to the stores, that now the women are kind of kicking more butt, so to say. And I mean the characters in the comics, and I just feel that they are getting slowly, kind of getting more equal. There are still a ton of comics that are more like the male characters dominated, but I do see there are a lot more like Red Sonja, for one. She's very like strong and kicks butt too. But there are still, some of those stereotypes, but I do see a lot of family-friendly comics too growing, and there's slowly becoming more and more of those. So I feel that helps, and definitely kind of more of equality there.
Right.
Less
Like
stereotypes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things DC's started doing, and kind of curious what your take on it is, they have it's called the Girls of the DC Universe. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so they're gearing it towards young female readers. And do you and there's been some debate actually on it going back and forth. Of course, some of it's being said by men, so I'm always careful with this kind of stuff. Is it something that, is a good thing that, they're gearing specifically to young girls, or should it be just more inclusive and they should just write better overall stories that include men and women? What do you think?
Yeah, I believe that they should do it to gear towards both boys and girls and have equal parts, like have a strong male and a strong female, like equal to each other. That's what I'm definitely trying to do that I do in my books. I have very strong female characters as well as strong male characters, but they both have their own unique qualities and unique strengths. And when they put their strengths together and they solve big problems, and so it's more about teamwork, I think is a very great theme in comics to kind of show that equality. And I feel there should be more of that.
Now that you're saying this, it's funny. I'm thinking back to when I was a kid, and that was a long time ago, and watching Scooby-Doo, and how, Thelma and Shaggy and how the four of them would work together, the five of them, kind of dog, would work together to solve a problem, as opposed to, Fred just comes up with the answer and everyone does that,
Right, yep.
You know?
Or even, in Rescue Rangers, it was Gadget, and she always helped like create something, and it always, but yet if something happens to a character, the others kind of jump in, and I do love that theme of teamwork, and I think that does try to appeal to both male and female, and using both their strengths and problem solving, I think kind of helps to solve that problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So what kind of comics, besides the Sunday Funnies and the cartoons, what comics do you read besides your own?
Yeah, there was, I was trying to think of, Invader Zim is one of my favorites.
Okay.
That is also a cartoon show, but I have the new series, and I'm trying to think, there's a sci-fi one. I can't remember the name of that sci-fi one.
Okay.
I spend a lot of my time doing my own comics. I don't tend to read so much, but I do a lot of research. But I tend to love the free comic book days. I get a bunch of variety of comics there. And so I'll pretty much I'm not like an avid reader of any particular one at this moment, but I do enjoy a whole bunch. I do like the Justice League and what's the trying to yeah. There's a whole sorry, I'm trying to think of a bunch, but I'm just like I guess so like I'm involved in doing my own comics. I don't really have too much time to read.
No, I totally get that. I have quite a few friends that work in the industry, and in fact, I'm friends with Greg Horn, who does a lot of covers for Marvel. And when I see him, I'll be like, oh, did you see the new trailer for Civil War? Oh no, I don't. I haven't watched much TV. Let alone ask him if he's been to any of the Marvel movies. He works for the company, and it's like, nah, I haven't had a chance to go out. He also has two young kids who probably, have seen the movies because his wife takes them, but he hasn't. So I totally understand how you guys get busy and lose time to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I run kids zones at Comic Con
Okay.
throughout New England too. So I'm actually putting on a kids comic book convention this year called Kids Con New England, June 11th at the Holiday Inn in Concord, New Hampshire. So I've been really busy with that too.
Oh, that's actually, you know what? That is really cool.
Thanks.
So how do you put something like that together? Who do you look for? Particular artists that gear towards kids? What are you doing to put that together?
Yeah, and so in my years of well, it's about 3 years or 4 years of actually being a vendor at Comic Cons.
Mm-hmm.
I've gained so many contacts with people, met so many amazing artists and cosplayers and friends that it's really gained quite a network there. And fortunately, I have a bunch that were so excited hearing about us starting a comic book convention. But particularly, my passion is for educating kids, and I love teaching kids art. I do cartooning workshops I'm running the kids activities area at these kids zones at comic conventions throughout New England. And so I've been doing this for the past couple of years, and I've always felt that a need for there to be more of like a kids area. A lot of times, even just I've asked comic book conventions, like, wouldn't it be great to us to have a whole row in Artist Alley devoted to kids comics? Because often, I, for one, have also had like one table right next to me is like all super bloody, gory, and like naked ladies, and then I have like my kid comics, and so I've always felt that very awkward. And for kids too, when they come to these conventions, see what they're exposed to and see. So I felt the need for there to be more of a kids convention. So I was like, let's just do it. So there isn't really a kids comic convention in New England, so I felt the need to start one, just all for family-friendly comic book creators. And we sold out of our artist tables within the first 2 months and have a lot more people interested in attending. So definitely next year we see the potential for growing and doing a larger venue next year if all goes well. Yeah.
Cool. I have I'm trying to think. The Laserman comics.
Yeah, I know.
Are those guys going to be there?
Unfortunately, no. They I can't recall if they did sign. I don't think he signed up actually.
Okay.
Yeah, he didn't. But I did, especially at Boston Comic Con. I reached out to all the artists and invited them to come, and we've been promoting a lot online, social networking, and we'll be advertising it and all over too. Yeah,
cool.
We have a lot of people really excited about it. I've heard from a lot of families, and so.
Well, send us the information, and we'll promote it as much as we can as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, greatly appreciate it. And the website's kidsconne.com. So kidsconne.com stands for New England NE. So yeah, we're also on Facebook, KidsConNE on Facebook. Yeah.
Which leads me, it's a great lead into the question I've been asking everyone as well. So if a young girl comes up to you and asks, let's say between 10, 13, somewhere in there, and says she's interested in comics, but she doesn't know what to read, what would you recommend for her?
How old was this kid again?
We'll say between 10 and 13, 10 and 12.
10.
Yeah.
Well, I would tell her, for one thing, to go to the comic book shops and to take a look at all the variety they have there. But Free Comic Book Day is a great way to get a sample of a bunch of different genres and different types of comics. And that can help to inspire you too to be creative and think about starting your own comics and to see how they do the format and how the people illustrate the comics. And at least I feel that for me that helped me in going to Free Comic Book Day and seeing a bunch of variety of comics to help inspire you, and can also get you interested into a particular series that you wouldn't otherwise have, known about or thought about.
Cool. That's always great advice, and you can easily get a sample on Free Comic Book Day, and it's
that's
coming up.
Coming up, yeah.
Cool.
What day is it? May 6th or so? I can't remember.
It's usually like the first weekend in May.
But another way too, I'm going to Comic Cons and seeing all the artists in the artist alley and talking with them. They can definitely, you'd be surprised how much artists, they love to give you input, and I mean, they love hearing input as well as giving feedback and input and advice as to how to get started, and also attending workshops at Comic Cons. Creators will often talk about how their whole creative process and how they started creating their comics.
Right. Oh, I'll never forget. This is probably 12 years ago. I was at a convention and I was with my daughter, who was about 10 at the time, and we're walking around Artist Alley, and one of the creators who had an all ages comics, stopped us and said, "How old's your daughter?" And I said, 10. He's like, "Oh, here." And he handed her a copy of the comic, and he's like, he said, like, we haven't done that great this weekend, but I'm more about, I want to get my book in the kids' hands. I want them to read, and enjoy it. So, like, yes, I think always going to the conventions and talking to the artists is the best way to get involved.
Oh yeah, I have. It's so rewarding seeing when I'm at the table and I look and a kid will like come back and be, "Oh my God, do you have book 2 or book 3?" and tell you that they love your books. It's so rewarding to hear that, to hear kids get so excited about it. And I've had them even come up and show me their drawings of the characters from my book. I've had fan art emailed to me, and it's just so awesome. And to see that you're inspiring future artists too, and future comic book creators. I've had kids, they come and even one of them was creating his own comic that it was with my characters, but I thought that was still, it's really cool. But I love giving back and to get kids excited about reading. It's very rewarding.
I think you just answered the question I normally wrap up with, and that is, how do you measure success?
Yeah, I would say I would measure success in seeing your work become bigger and greater than just being a physical thing, but more of like reaching out, being an emotional thing, and getting people happy and excited about reading, to see your work in the hands of families and inspiring future creators and artists out there. It's kind of like a whole circle of how I saw like myself as a kid, and then seeing that happen again with the young generation now, and seeing how excited they can be. There's so much negativity in the world, and like you see all the news, wars and stuff. That's why I loved comics, and I still do, because it's a nice escape from it. And sure, there are some comics that also have, horror and scary things too, but it's still like an escape in a fun fantasy world, and it's really enjoyable.
Cool. That's a great answer. Cool. So, before we say goodbye, is there anything in particular you would like to plug or tell people to look out for?
Yeah, you can buy my Eplis sci-fi comic book series on my website. It's epliscomic.com. That's EPLIS comic.com. And we're also on Facebook, Eplis Comic. And you can check out us at KidsCon New England. Our event is June 11th 2016 at the Holiday Inn in Concord, New Hampshire. So it's right downtown Concord. And we're going to have all kinds of fun activities for the kids. It's about promoting family-friendly comics and promoting art education and literacy through comics. And we're going to have artists, writers, face painters, cosplayers, Jedi training, all kinds of fun.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I definitely think all of our fans that are in the New Hampshire area should check that out. And I just want to say thank you for your time. This has been a great conversation, and I hope that you can inspire some young girls out there to start creating themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, and keep on drawing.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Ben, do
Yes.
you have any other amazing facts about women in comics?
Well, I do. There's actually a woman in comics that we should all know, just because she is very near and dear to us physically, in that she was a Pennsylvania resident. Alison Bechdel was an American cartoonist who originally did a long-running web comic strip called Dykes to Watch Out For, and became more critically known for her graphic memoir called Fun Home, which was adapted as a Tony Award-winning musical. But what a lot of people might be aware of from her is she has gained some notoriety by this thing known as the quote-unquote Bechdel test, in that there is a test that you can put any movie or media up against, where if it contains, it passes the test, if there are two or more women in it having a conversation that does not center around a lead male character.
And do you know an interesting fact about that test?
What's that?
One of the most popular and maybe one of the first movies that passed that test, and it's also another name the test is known by.
What would that be?
Aliens.
Ah, nice.
So it's called the Alien Test?
Well,
I think that's actually when it was introduced as a concept, was in a comic strip where aliens was what was being talked about, which is why it has that common association.
So they were talking about an alien dude.
no, the movie Aliens.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
In the movie Aliens,
Right.
there was
Yes.
Ripley and there was the young girl, and they had conversations that did not involve dudes.
Well, that's mostly because most of the dudes were getting chumped.
And
They didn't really have many to talk about anymore. And what was left was, an android.
That's fair.
An android dude, but
The point is, though, there's a lot of movies that do not pass this test. A lot of movies that you might consider to be good movies, but it's a sad state of affairs that that there's a flaw, a failure in writing, that you can't have conversations happen between supporting female characters that aren't about dudes.
yes.
So,
that makes me sad.
but it's getting better, John. It's getting better.
And see, ladies and gentlemen, this is why we couldn't do a full hour of us talking about women in comics. So we're going to wrap up.
Has it made us sad?
Because
John has
Yes.
sad.
John has.
I has a sad.
So we're gonna round out the interviews with the one and only Barbara Slate. For those who aren't familiar with her, she has worked on such titles as Betty and Veronica. She created a couple books for Marvel, which Yuppies in Hell was one of the books that she did over there. For DC Comics, she did Angel in Love, and a slew of other things. She's done Disney books. She's done she's been in the industry for a long time. So again, without further ado, we're gonna let her tell you her story in her own words. So here we go. Hey everyone. Now we're speaking with Barbara Slate. She has been working in the comic industry for a while now.
110 years.
She's known for such works as Angel Love from DC Comics, Yuppies from Hell from Marvel. She's also worked on Betty and Veronica, Beauty and the Beast, and Pocahontas, plus quite a few more. So I'm so glad that you agreed to be part of this conversation. I think anyone who has an idea of what it is like for women in comics, I think you have an idea of that. So I want to ask you something that we always ask our guests. We always like to start off with this question is, how did you first become interested in comics? And who were some of the comics you read when you were younger?
Well, when I went to overnight camp, I would stay up late and read romance comics, and the romance comics were really a wonderful way of. Today, they're very graphic, but
Mm-hmm.
back then it was just, I was like 10, and it was scintillating. You kind of got these feelings, but they weren't. They were lovely and playful.
Right.
And so I loved romance comics, love comics, and I'm really sorry that there aren't any today. It's pow bang, and for little girls, I think the love stories that I read when I was little were wonderful. And then, of course, I read Betty and Veronica. And had I known when I got older I was going to actually be writing Betty and Veronica with Stan Goldberg and Dan DeCarlo drawing them, I would have just sailed through life. I would have had no angst as a teenager, knowing that would have been what I would end up doing. So I loved writing those characters.
Yeah, no, I've met Stan Goldberg. He's great artist, great guy.
Yes, actually, Stan and I were great friends. We were together in the Hamptons, and we went on boat trips together, and I just loved him. I miss him terribly.
Yeah. So then from that, reading those romance novels and Betty and Veronica when you were a kid, that obviously did influence the direction you went to go in your life. Because you do art and write as well.
Yes, I do art, but I do my own characters.
Mhm.
I don't draw Betty and Veronica. I don't write. I write them, but I don't draw any licensed characters.
Okay.
Like with Barbie, I wrote 65 Barbies, but I am not I can't do the Disney characters, the Barbie characters. I'm much better creating my own characters. But I admire everybody who can do that. I can't be that exact in some of these characters, like with Belle, when I did Beauty and the Beast, she was different from the left than she was from the right.
Mhm.
And actually, when Disney licensed their characters to Marvel, they brought in their own artists. Because, doing a Disney is, you have to be extremely exact, and that's not me.
Right. Okay. So then, who would you say were some of your influences, in your writing?
Well, in the comic book world, certainly Tom DeFalco. He was editor-in-chief of Marvel, and he started the Girls line, and that was a miracle, because back then, I'm giving away my age, but back then in the 80s, there were only two women, me and Trina Robbins, or Trina Robbins and me. And we were the only ones who were writing and drawing for mainstream comics. And Tom brought in this girls line with, first I did Yuppies from Hell, and then after that, he got the rights to Barbie and Beauty and the Beast. So there was a real girls line there, and that was astounding, because all of a sudden we had these wonderful characters with Spider-Man and the Hulk and all those crazy male characters, and
Mhm.
there's Barbie, and of course Stan Goldberg, Dan DeCarlo, big influences. I think they were more influential than I even knew. They were kind of in my head when I drew, and I didn't even realize that until I got much older, that I used their style of drawing. And Jeanette Kahn from DC Comics, she gave me my first job for Angel Love, so she's a big influence. And then, of course, my editor, Hildy Mesnick, who I still use today whenever I do anything. Nothing goes out of my studio without her stamp of approval, and she is a very tough editor, which I like and sometimes don't like.
Well, no, and that's great when you can find someone you can partner with that you trust, and, isn't also going to be like, everything you write's so wonderful. I'm not going to.
Oh no, she's very mean actually. I'll show her something and I'll, what, I always think everything I do before I get it out there, before I show it to her, I feel really confident. And she will get on the phone and actually yawn. And I'll say, well, so did you like it? And she'll say, oh, like that. I'll say, oh, I guess you didn't like it. So, she's very, very brutal, very tough. But when she likes it, I feel confident that it's really going to sell and it's going to do very well.
Good. So, you brought up something very interesting about the romance novels and or the romance comics and how they have disappeared. And, in a way, that was a way back in the 40s and the 50s and I guess the 60s is kind of when they died, to get girls into comics.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so what do you think led to them disappearing?
Well, I think what happened was in the 50s, there was a psychiatrist or psychologist or somebody who had a lot of authority who wrote a book and said that the demise of the youth or the
seduction of the innocent.
Thank you. There you go. Was all about comic books, and so I think mothers got terrified, got very frightened that their children would be dummies if they read comic books, and that was a big factor. So comic books were really frowned on. But of course, today, everything is graphic novels and comics. I go to schools, I teach how to do graphic novels, how to do comics, and teachers are embracing comics and graphic novels. And it's totally turned around because they see that there are so many students who are visual. And it's not about looking and grasping. I mean, I know I always loved pictures, but in third grade, they took away all my picture books. So all we had was this white paper with black lettering on, and it was terrible. No color, no pictures. So I think they realized that in the end, comic books really are wonderful. And my daughter learned how to read through Betty and Veronica. I got my stack of Betty and Veronica every month, and that is the only thing that got her reading. And now she's a good reader. So learning how to read through comic books, I think, is a great idea.
No, I did the same thing with my son. It was hard to get him to read anything, but he liked Star Wars and he liked Pokemon, so I got him Star Wars and Pokemon comic books, and he started reading them. And
there you go.
Right. Yeah, I always recommend that to people. Like, well, what is your child like? I'm sure you can find a comic book related to that in some way, and that'll get them into it. So.
Yeah, and also reading English as a second language is very good for comics. Kids who are Spanish or have their language skills are not, they're not English. They read comic books, and all of a sudden they see pop and pow on the page, and they can look and see. And actually, if you do a comic book, the way I see a comic, it's kind of like music. So I put my layouts up on my bulletin board, and if I see it and it moves beautifully, and you can actually tell the whole story without reading a single word, then the words start coming into play, and they actually fall into place. And a kid can start learning how to read by just looking at the pictures.
Wow, that's actually really interesting. And I have my daughter's best friend's mother teaches English as a second language. She's actually originally from Poland, and so she teaches.
Get her comic books.
Yes, I think I'm definitely going to talk to her about this. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, Betty and Veronica is a wonderful character. They're great characters, and they should really look at the way it flows. It's anyway. I could talk about that all day. I love that.
No, that's I love that too, and I think it's something people need to really look at when they look at comics is how they help really teach people how to read. So back a little bit on to the sexism in comics. So comic books, as a medium, traditionally, not traditionally, but within the last 30 years, traditionally have been geared towards men. They've been seen as a boys' club, more or less. And of course, a lot of the tropes along with that is the styles of the way women are drawn. Definitely can be considered sexist.
The big boobs.
Yes, exactly. My favorite story in comics is, I can't remember the artist's name who created Power Girl, and he purposely every issue made her breasts larger and larger until somebody at DC said, "Hey, what's going on here?" And it was like about the 10th or 11th issue. And he's like, "I was waiting to see if somebody noticed." So,
well, we purposely made Barbie's boobs smaller and smaller. So Barbie was a great role model because it was done by all women with Hildy at the Realm, and we made sure that every month that she was a career woman, she could do anything and be anywhere, and we made sure that she looked like a normal girl. So that was a group of women who were just passionate about making sure this character worked.
Right.
For girls.
Right, and that was basically my question. What do you see as a way to resolve that kind of issue? And that's women working in comics.
I don't think it doesn't really. I don't feel like it's a huge issue because it's boys like boobs and men like boobs, and most boys turn into men, hopefully, and that's the way they draw. I mean, it's okay. I don't really. It doesn't really bother me. I have to say, and I know that's not the norm. I mean, women are upset about it, but I just think that's the way it is. If you tell a man not to draw big boobs, I don't know what's going to happen to him. What's going to happen to his creativity? What's going to happen? This is the way they draw. God bless them.
No, and I get that. And in fact, one of my good friends is Greg Horn. I don't know if you've met him or worked with him at all.
I've never worked with him.
Okay, he does a lot of covers for Marvel, and he draws very sexy women. He doesn't always overdo the anatomy, and he's gotten in trouble with articles online and stuff with it. But at the same time, his covers sell books, and that's why Marvel keeps hiring.
Yeah, and now the comic book world is so open to women. There are so many women who are writing and drawing graphic novels, and that's really the way. If people are upset about it, that's the way you get around it, by just doing it yourselves. And as I said with the Barbie, and we're passionate about her not being a sex symbol, and she was just a terrific character, just a really smart girl. And the only thing she couldn't do, that Mattel wrote, is that she doesn't make mistakes. Although I did get one mistake in there. After 65 comics, I was able to put one little mistake in, and that is that she sent the wrong Valentine to Ken, and that was a mix-up. So it wasn't a terrible mistake, but it was a mistake.
Well, there you go. Well,
I'm so proud.
Right, and that's, I think that's an important point too, right? Is if we want to break down barriers and have women treated like equals, we also can't personify them as perfect all the time, because men make mistakes, women make mistakes. Right. So
I think Mattel is working on that now with the new Barbies that are out.
Right.
I think they're working on that. But Skipper and Ken, all her friends and Ken, everybody could make a mistake. But the other thing with Ken, he was just some guy who just kept bringing her flowers, and so I wanted to make him much more important. And I had him flying all over the world, and I made him much more of a mensch, because I figured this fabulous girl is not going to like this guy who just brings her flowers, as nice as that is.
Right. So I have a question, kind of off topic, but since you worked on the comic for so long, have you seen the Toy Story movies?
Yes.
What do you think of how they portrayed Ken in the one movie?
I you know what? It was so long ago.
Okay. Yeah, it was so funny. It was the third one, and obviously I have kids too, so I've seen them all, and it was a children's daycare center, and Ken the Barbie doll that's in the group meets Ken for the first time, and of course it's love at first sight.
Well, I didn't see that one, but I will. That sounds wonderful.
But the gag was that there was never a Barbie there to play with, so he had the Ken's dream house, and he had all these different.
I don't know. I just get a little bored of everything being so correct. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what happened with comic books and graphic novels, like when you go into libraries now, there's all sections of graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I moved upstate, I got a call from my local library, the Claverick Library, and the chairman of the board of the Claverick Library asked me if I would teach how to do graphic novels to teens. And I was so thrilled because I was working on, I have my last graphic novel was Getting Married and Other Mistakes, and I was working on this, and it was just me alone in my studio, and it was wonderful to get out and actually teach teenagers. But I called the librarian beforehand and I said, look, I need you to cap it at 15 because I just felt like I couldn't teach more than 15. And she laughed in my face. She goes, if we get more than 3 teenagers in this library, I don't know what she said, but it was something like I'll eat my hat or do the jig or whatever she said. And there were 15. And in fact, there was a waiting list. And from there, I started teaching in schools and libraries and going to conventions across the country, teaching how to do a graphic novel and taking notes on all the kids, their breakthroughs and how they, what keeps them away from what depresses them about their writing and their drawing. And I had all these copious notes in I could save everything in my creative. I have a box that I throw everything in. And one day I looked in and I saw that I had a book, and that's my book. You Can Do a Graphic Novel. And that is, I don't mean to brag, but it's a very popular book because teenagers and actually 8 and 9-year-olds now are writing and drawing comics because it's become so popular.
Right.
So that was a plug for You Can Do a Graphic Novel, just in case you didn't know.
No, plug away. That's we always encourage that. But yeah, no, and I guess that's got to be, that's got to feel good too, that that you're influencing young people to create.
It does feel good. And then I started doing teenagers, and then I got a call from a principal of a school from 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and she says, can you teach them? And I said, oh, absolutely. It's the same thing.
Mm.
And then and now I'm teaching at Cooper Union in New York, and it's all adults. And so that is a whole other thing where adults come in and they're all working, and most of them are artists of some sort. They're painters. And so we bring in the graphic novel, and somehow it gets transformed into paintings and book art. Mm-hmm. And so it's just pushing the form further. And that to me has been a fantastic experience.
Yeah, that sounds great. I wish I was a little more talented.
Well, people come and they say, oh, I can't draw. But you'd be amazed what you can do. And I love stick figures. So I encourage people everybody can do stick figures.
That is true. So we talked, this is great lead into this question. We've been talking about teaching. We've been talking about young people. If you're at a convention, let's say, and a mother comes up to you and says, my 10-year-old or 11-year-old daughter is interested in comics, and they ask you, what would you recommend that they read? Do you have ones that you recommend?
Well, I recommend, first of all, to read anything. Mm-hmm. I think maybe 50 Shades of Grey is a little bit much for a 10-year-old, but anything. I read Nancy Drew when I was growing up. But as far as comics, I think that the Barbie comics are really fantastic, and you can get them online. Sadly, they're not selling in stores too much anymore. Mm-hmm. And I like all the Disneys. I think Disney is good. And what else? Anything. I mean, My Sweet 16, I think, is wonderful.
Okay.
I keep talking about my books. I'm trying to think of somebody else's so I can give somebody else a plug, but I can't.
If you want to recommend, you can do a graphic novel to a 10-year-old, that's fine, right?
Well, you can do a graphic novel. I think if you're 9 years old, you can actually read. You can do a graphic novel, and of course, it's been proven that if you learn how to, for instance, do a book, the Center for Book Arts teaches how to put together books by, with the bindings, and if you learn how to put together a book, chances are you're going to read more. The same with comics. If you learn how to do comics you can do a graphic novel, yeah, you're going to love comics. So it really makes sense to, to learn how to do what you love. And I'm trying to think that really makes sense. Yeah.
No, it does. I mean, that's also something
Thank you, David.
That's something we encourage on this show all the time, that if you have a passion for something, that you should pursue it. Because, it's better to say, I tried and I failed, as opposed to say, oh, what could have been.
Well, it's so true about having passion. And everyone said, "Oh, follow your dreams." I don't know if I go for that, but it certainly, if you do have a passion for something. I knew when I was 4 years old, I had the world's worst babysitter, and she would come to my house, and as soon as my parents left, she'd be on the phone with her boyfriend. She was horrible. I wanted to play Chutes and Ladders, and she was just totally ignoring me. But I looked over her shoulder, and she could draw. And I watched her move that pencil around. And to me, that was magic. I've never seen, I saw my parents, write on a piece of paper, but for somebody to move lines around and then create this amazing, beautiful girl, it was so magical to me, and I knew then I was going to be an artist. I didn't know what an artist was, but I said, "How did you do that?" And she said, "I'm an artist." And I knew I was going to be an artist. And from I was age 4, that was my passion, and that's what I was going to do. And there was nothing else I could do. I was lucky. And then writing actually came very, very easy to me. I don't know why. I just was able to write, but drawing took more time, but I knew I was going to be an artist. So yeah, finding your passion is I wake up every day thrilled that I am going into my studio and going to be writing and drawing that day. Right now I'm working on my autobiography in graphic novel form, and Hildy is editing it, and it's been about a year and a half, I guess. And actually, today I'm going to read from it at the Berkshire Festival of Women, if anybody's around there. And so this is the first time I'm going to actually read it out loud, and I'm a little excited and a little nervous.
Oh, well, I wish you best of luck with that.
Well, thank you.
And I definitely will look for that when it comes out.
Okay, well, I'll let you know. It's probably going to be another, I'd say, year or two, but It's moving along very well. Well, thank you.
So, question that we always kind of wrap up with. We always ask this of our guests. How do you measure success?
Oh, just waking up every day and having a good day. Just waking up and enjoying what you're doing. If you're measuring success by money, you're in the wrong field, mostly, I would say. This is doing comics is just about passion and love, and that's how I measure success, just loving what you do.
All right. I that's an answer we get a lot, and it's probably my favorite answer.
David, I just got a message saying internet connection problem. There's a problem with the internet between the two. Did you get that?
Yeah, you broke up just a little bit, but I think I got most of it.
Well, you have to cling to every word I say. So.
Okay. So you want to? We can do that again. So
No, that's okay. That's okay. No, I was simply saying that it's really about getting up and being, for me, it's about doing what you love. I love to write, I love to draw, and I'm very lucky that I can do that and actually support myself doing it. It would be horrible to have to do something else, I would think.
yeah, I agree. All right, and then so you're working on your autobiography, but is there anything else out that you want people to look for?
Well, if you want to take my class this summer at Cooper Union, I am teaching there for June. I'm teaching how to do graphic novels, and sign up. I would love for you to come, and going to Wizard World conventions. I'm going to be in Des Moines, which was fabulous. I love going to Des Moines. It's really a wonderful place. The people are fabulous there. So I sound a little like Donald Trump there, but I love Des Moines. And what else? No, that's about it.
Are you going to be in Philadelphia?
No, I wish I were, but I'm not. I was there last year.
Okay.
Yeah, Philadelphia was a great convention. Yeah, no, I have to get my schedule. They still haven't given me my whole schedule for the year. I don't know why not, but they haven't.
Okay, because I know the Wizard people try to get the artists and the writers to go to as many conventions as they can. So.
Well, you really? I mean, I know that it's very top heavy with celebrities.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I didn't know that they're trying to get the artists and writers to go to as many as they want.
Well, all I know is like I can speak for Greg, because they try to get him to come to every Wizard show, and I know they try to get they've been trying to get.
He does covers for Marvel. Yes,
right.
I can understand that. Yeah,
right.
But it's different for women. It really is. My fan base is young girls, which is half the audience. Yeah, yes. I don't know why they're not clamoring to get me there, actually, David. But I am going to Des Moines, and last year I went to a few. But this year I haven't. I have not signed up for that many.
All right. Well, Wizard, if you're listening to this, the point of this episode again is we're trying to break down barriers, and half your audience is women, so.
It is half and when I sit in Artist Alley, sometimes at these conventions, I'm the only woman there. And I just wonder why they're not clamoring to get me, David.
Well, if I was running the convention, I would be clamoring to get you.
You're very sweet. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you. This has been great, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. And yeah.
Well, this has been a lot of fun.
All right. Well, I don't know how to end these because I'm. Again.
Well, here, I'll end it for you. I got to go now, David, because I'm going to the Festival of Women in the Berkshires. So, got to go.
All right.
How's that?
And I'm getting a last-minute message here from my co-host.
Oh, no, I'm just adding links.
Yeah.
Well, since I'm doing my research now, I might as well report it back to you, in real time.
In real time.
You're not supposed to do your research as we're recording the show, John.
Right. I at least look stuff up 20 minutes before we started.
See?
What am I supposed to do while I'm waiting for you guys to say something that I can riff on? I gotta have something to do in my free time. And
Fair enough.
So, I for one really hope you enjoyed those interviews. I hope we haven't done women a disservice with our tomfoolery here. What do you guys think?
No, I think this is good. Although the link I sent you was a link to an Amazon book about women in comics and how they've been overlooked. And there's probably a whole lot more that can be said on it that a lot of other sites seem to be reporting this month. So you should take a look through the internet and read on up on all the things that you've missed.
And there are plenty of other women who've been involved in comics for decades.
Yes.
And some of the ones we talked about were fairly recent, and the interviews were all of people currently in comics. But, for instance, there's Louise Simonson, who's been comic book writer and editor for, literally since the, 70s. The women have been behind the scenes for forever, and as they are in all things, because they rock.
Yes. And sometimes they roll. I don't know. Yes, and so yeah, like like John said, and Ben is alluding to here, like, there's a lot to go out and learn, just pick up your computer and go onto the internet and look stuff up. And,
Right.
there's this book, Women and the Comics, which came out in 1985. I believe there was Marvel put out a women heroes in comics, just a few years ago. So, yeah.
There's a couple of articles on comic book resources about like top 25 female comic book writers.
Hell, even just look at the credits in the comic books that you're reading, because you might be surprised to see how many women are actually involved in the titles that you read every day.
Just recently, she just left the book, but Gail Simone was working on Batgirl for a long time, and Wonder Woman before that. Everyone loved those stories, and they were really well written. So there you go. Like, it's there, people. What's interesting though? Wonder Woman doesn't wear a cape, but Batgirl does.
She does wear a cape. She's got to be careful about that.
I know, because it might get caught in the door. So, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, as we say each and every week, don't let your cape get caught in the door. Have a good week.